The Synchro-Mystic presents Synchro-Mystique. In comments on my previous video, astute viewers have brought numerous additional Charlie Kirk-related syncs to my attention. Let's catalog some of them. One of the most interesting clusters of synchronicities have to do with the 1998 movie Snake Eyes, featuring Hollywood actor Nick Cage. As a foreword, Cage is a peculiar guy in his own right. As an article on Ripley's Believe It or Not reports, quote, "In New Orleans' oldest cemetery, the famous St. Louis No. 1, amongst crumbling century-old graves stands a modern pyramid 9 feet tall and inscribed with the words Omnia ab uno, meaning everything from one. It's the future tomb of Nicolas Cage, born Nicholas Kim Coppola. The edifice puzzles everyone, even people who give tours of the graveyard for a living, and it stands among figures representing New Orleans' history, including the famed Queen of Voodoo, Marie Laveau." I had never seen the movie Snake Eyes before I read the comments, so I took time to view it yesterday, as of this recording. And, in my estimation, my viewers are entirely warranted in calling attention to it. Why is this movie noteworthy? Well, even mainstream sources, including Newsweek magazine and Yahoo News, are noting a spate of viral memes drawing attention to a cluster of odd synchronicities. Among the uncanny coinkydinks are the facts that the film's assassination victim is named Charles Kirkland, that Kirkland's killing is carried out via a sniper's bullet through the neck, and, as a correspondent aptly put it, quote, "A patsy nicknamed Tyler the Executioner took a fall for the whole assassination operation to happen." End quote. According to alleged and either dishonest or uninformed arbiters of popular sense and sensibility, the movie's plot doesn't track along with Charlie Kirk's life sufficiently closely. For example, a Yahoo article, reposting from the self-appointed fact-checkers at Snopes, blandly says, quote, "The Kirkland character was the U.S. Secretary of Defense in the film, while Charlie Kirk was a political commentator with no government position. Additionally, the fictional shooting happened during a boxing match, not in a setting similar to Kirk's assassination, which occurred at an outdoor event on a university campus." The commissars at Snopes then declare, quote, "There was no tangible evidence the film Snake Eyes predicted Charlie Kirk's assassination on September 10, 2025. There was also no evidence that the suspect in Kirk's assassination was inspired by the film." End quote. Nothing to see here. Of course, these ridiculous straw-man dismissals fail even to mention, let alone rebut, more substantial hypotheses, such as those that would invoke Jungian synchronicity as an explanans, or that might postulate the existence of a sophisticated intelligence or psychological warfare operation lurking in the background. Nevertheless, in virtue of these alleged factual mismatches, we're simply told that the proper, read rational, belief is to dismiss the clear synchronicities that do exist as an uninteresting chance occurrence, or series of them, rather. No other effort is made to explain the parallels that arguably stare us in the face. But of course, it shouldn't take a synchro-mystic to wonder whether these and other details are interesting. It just takes a bare minimum of curiosity. American author Rex Stout, creator of the fictional detective Nero Wolfe, has his hard-nosed and ostensibly atheistic character declare in one place, quote, "In a world that operates largely at random, coincidences are to be expected, but any one of them must always be mistrusted." Michael Hoffman has elsewhere underscored the line, delivered by Police Commissioner Jim Gordon to the newly promoted Officer Blake in The Dark Knight Rises, "You're a detective now, son. You're not allowed to believe in coincidence anymore." The bare-bones plot summary of Snake Eyes is that Cage portrays a corrupt cop named Rick Santoro, who was evidently invited to a boxing match by his friend, a U.S. Navy commander named Kevin Dunn, played by actor Gary Sinise. Sinise's character is attending the fight in a professional capacity as head of security for the Secretary of Defense. But not long into the film, or the bout, the SecDef is assassinated. The rest of the flick concerns Cage's, Detective Santoro's, efforts to get to the bottom of things. And as he does, he uncovers a conspiracy plot. The action, by the way, is set inside the fictional Millennium Casino Hotel in Atlantic City, New Jersey. By all accounts, President Donald J. Trump has had a long and turbulent business history in that real city, mostly centered around his own portfolio of hotel casinos. Admittedly, Trump's connections in that regard were evidently severed at various times via bankruptcies, property closures or sales, or other rebrandings. According to Wikipedia, however, the movie's production spent 2 weeks on location in Atlantic City, New Jersey, filming at the then Trump-owned Taj Mahal. Moreover, the fictional casino owner, Gilbert Powell, played by John Hurd Jr., is variously said to have been based on Howard Hughes or Donald Trump. Furthermore, a Chicago Tribune review of Snake Eyes, titled Eyes on the Lies, and originally printed in 1998, refers to the movie as, quote, a murder mystery as triple-decker chess game. A Wall Street Journal article from earlier this year draws our parallel, writing, quote, Donald Trump's admirers flatter him by saying he plays three-dimensional chess while his opponents play checkers. In the movie, Gary Sinise's Commander Dunn at one point encourages Cage's character to consider getting away from and out of Atlantic City, saying, quote, this isn't a beach town anymore, it's a sewer. And Cage replies, but it's my sewer, and I love it. Everybody knows me. I got the whole town wired. Maybe I'll run for mayor or something, because I was made for this sewer, baby, and I am the king. So, the story is about a man, king of the sewer, who discovers that a trusted friend, perhaps his only one, had intentionally placed him in the middle of an assassination, and had counted on his rapacity to make him controllable. In other words, as Cage later laments, he was used by his best friend who made him into a sucker. Or could we say he was made a fool of? Speaking of Gary Sinise, there are some points of interest. For one thing, he portrayed Alabama's 45th governor, George Wallace, in a 1997 made-for-television movie. We discussed Wallace in our video 1968. Wallace is intriguing here in part because of an unsuccessful assassination attempt that occurred on him in 1972. Of course, there's also a surname Lexi-Link, as Sir William Wallace, whom we mentioned in our first presentation, is a character in Scottish history and in Mel Gibson's film Braveheart. Recalling that in our first video we mentioned the names Charlie and Francois are sometimes said to mean free man, yet another commenter points out that, quote, in the movie, the last word shouted by Sir William Wallace before the executioner's axe comes down on his neck is freedom. Furthermore, William Wallace became a martyr for the cause of Scottish independence, which is the label now given by some to Charlie Kirk. Sinise is also worth mentioning because of his group, Friends of Abe, a reference to Abraham Lincoln, founded in 2004 and disbanded in 2016, that was a collection of conservative-leaning Republicans in Hollywood. Wikipedia lists Pat Boone, John Voight, Kelsey Grammer, Kevin Sorbo, and Scott Baio as among the group's membership. And the same article states that Herman Cain, Michelle Bachmann, Paul Ryan, and Donald Trump were among the celebrities and politicians that the Friends of Abe hosted. Former CNN commentator and Pennsylvania Senator Richard John Rick Santorum Jr. was also on the latter list. And of course, you'll recall that Nick Cage's Snake Eyes character was named Rick Santoro. You might say a confusion of reality and fantasy is encoded in the movie at multiple levels. There's also a related and odd twinning aspect woven into the casting and character choices. For instance, even as Gary Sinise played Commander Kevin Dunn, the real-life actor, also named Kevin Dunn, but with a different spelling, portrayed a fictional reporter in the film named Lou Logan. Jim Brandon has long been of the opinion that Honest Abe's surname is a curious name of power, and the Friends of Abe connection is as good a place as any to bring it up, not least because the Snake Eyes boxer whose dive diverts attention from the assassination of Charles Kirkland in the film is named Lincoln Tyler. And that's pretty on the nose. As mentioned in our original Substack article, Tyler, Tyler, is an alternative spelling of Tyler, Tiler, which latter denotes both one who makes or lays tiles, like perhaps those found in the tessellated chessboard-style floor pattern seen in many Masonic lodges, as well as signifying a master mason whose duty is to guard the door of the lodge and to permit no one to pass who does not have the permission of the master. 10th U.S. President John Tyler was the first vice president to accede to the big job after the untimely death of his boss, William Henry Harrison, who died a mere 31 days after taking office, which is far and away the shortest term of any POTUS so far. How old was Charlie Kirk again? For more Tyler Lexi-Links, see our Substack. Charlie Kirk himself, as well as some of our minor players, including Snake Eyes actor Gary Sinise, were reportedly born in the state of Illinois, known as the Land of Lincoln. Amongst the most prominent biographical facts about our 16th president is that he was assassinated. Lincoln was of course shot April 14, 1865 at Ford's Theater and died the next morning. The event is no less fraught with unanswered questions than assassinations of more recent vintage. Among these is the fact that one of the great emancipator's usual bodyguards, Ward Hill Lemon, was evidently absent during the fatal attack, supposedly on the orders of Lincoln himself. Meanwhile, the man assigned to protection detail on that fateful night was either corrupt or incompetent, a D.C. policeman named John Frederick Parker, who, by his own account, went off and got drunk while the president was shot. Full accounts of the assassination of Lincoln would have to consider the complicity of Lincoln's Secretary of War, Edwin McMaster Stanton, as well as espionage agent Lafayette Curry Baker, and possibly the eventual 18th President Ulysses S. U.S. Grant, who was evidently born with the decidedly Judeo-Masonic first name, Hiram. In any case, Ward H. Lemon, which surname you'll note is said to be pronounced with a short E sound, even though it's spelled with an A, published a biography of Lincoln in 1872. In the work, Lemon reported on numerous alleged paranormal psychic experiences of his late friend, including a premonition in which Lincoln felt that he was destined to, quote, rise to power and greatness, only to be suddenly cut off at the height of his career and the fullness of his fame. Lincoln is also supposed to have had a dream or vision in which he observed himself as a shrouded corpse lying in state inside the White House after having been killed by an assassin. We touched on these and related angles in our video Haunted DC, as well as in the companion Substack post. Having seen the movie, in our judgment, the most general description of the De Palma film is that it's about an assassination that isn't what it appears to be. Indeed, this point about appearances and reality is explicit. Taglines on movie posters include sentences such as, "Believe everything except your eyes," "Now you see it, now you don't," "Seeing is believing," and "Watch closely." Within the movie itself, this theme is baked into the dialogue. It's first registered when a newscaster is told to redo her delivery of a line, presumably because telling the truth might, in the relevant instance, tend to negatively impact the town's holiday weekend business. The on-screen reporter says, "I'm eager to go ringside along with fight fans who have braved Hurricane Jezebel too, but her delivery is interrupted by an off-screen voice yelling, "Cut, cut. They want you to call it a tropical storm, not a hurricane." She momentarily protests, emphasizing, "But it is a hurricane." However, ultimately she gives in, but not before sarcastically remarking, "I love this town. They even spin the weather." Another peekaboo glimpse of this theme comes by way of a fleeting reference to the murder of 35th President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. In Snake Eyes, speaking of longtime Columbia Broadcasting System, or CBS anchorman Daniel Irving Dan Rather Jr., actor Kevin Dunn's Lou Logan asks rhetorically, "Do you know how Rather got his break?" And then he answers his own query with the words, "The goddamn Kennedy assassination." As we got into in a dedicated video on the subject, Dan Rather's break, quote-unquote, was attached to his misrepresentation of crucial moments from Abraham Zapruder's important silent film that just happened, so the story goes, to capture JFK's assassination. Here now we will play an excerpt from our earlier presentation titled 10 Reasons to Believe in a JFK Conspiracy. Consider a then-youthful CBS News correspondent Dan Rather speaking about his viewing of the film of the assassination captured by Ukrainian-born American clothier Abraham Zapruder. Rather misrepresents the result of the second shot to hit Kennedy, which he calls the third total shot, falsely claiming that it caused the president's head to move violently forward.
A second shot, the third total shot, hit the president's head. His head could be seen to move violently forward.
In fact, Kennedy's head was savagely blown back and to the left, in the memorable phraseology of director Oliver Stone's film, JFK. You'll note that in 1963, the Zapruder film was purchased by Time Life and essentially put on ice. It's an interesting story, and it involves a now seldom mentioned former OSS operative, Army psychological warfare mastermind, and Eisenhower speechwriter named Charles Douglas C.D. Jackson. The full telling will have to wait, but for the time being, I'll simply note that except for the publication of odd still frames, several of which were reproduced out of their proper sequence, Dan Rather's claims could not readily be exposed as fabrications. In 2022, when Zapruder's footage is easily discovered by anyone with a web browser, widely available references such as Wikipedia now casually admit that there were, quote, inaccuracies in Dan Rather's description of the film. That's an understatement. Going further, another poster writes, another weird connection would be the outside force disrupting in this film the fictional Hurricane Jezebel, which shares the name with the website Jezebel. And according to the previously cited Newsweek, the online feminist publication Jezebel indeed, quote, sought out witches to put a curse on Charlie Kirk before his assassination. The article reporting this, titled "We Paid Some Etsy Witches to Curse Charlie Kirk" and dated September 8, 2025, was deleted by Jezebel.com after the assassination on the 10th. Since Kirk's murder, a kind of Christian denominational confusion has reigned. According to Michael Hoffman, this has prompted Catholics in particular to fantasize that Kirk may have been considering converting, or that he had secretly already done so. Kirk was ostensibly a public evangelical Protestant and is on record denying many historic Catholic doctrines. Nonetheless, Newsweek stated that, quote, the Kirks were so shaken by the Jezebel article and the prospect of a witch's curse that they had a friend, who podcaster Megan Kelly said may have been a Catholic priest, come over and pray over Charlie. End quote. Incidentally, the author of the previously cited Ripley's article on Nick Cage supposed that the actor's weird pyramid tomb, shown earlier, might have been his way of trying to reverse a, quote, voodoo curse. You see, in 2007, Cage bought the purportedly haunted and certainly creepy L'Ollari Mansion, a massive estate in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Madame Delphine L'Ollari had a full detail of black slaves whom she tortured and chained up within her home. The horrific facts were confirmed when the place caught fire, and after L'Ollari refused to help would-be rescuers get inside, a mob broke the door down and discovered dead bodies and survivors in a pitiable state. But the superstitious in New Orleans think that the actor carefully chose his final resting place next to the Queen of Voodoo so that she would protect him from the vengeful spirits of the house. End quote. You can read more about Madame Lellaurier in Jim Brandon's Weird America. The website Jezebel was founded in 2007 by one Anna Holmes. The surname Holmes is another potent Twilight language word, as we've touched on elsewhere. We won't pursue this line too far here, but consider a few quick examples. Elizabeth Ann Holmes was ostensibly an entrepreneur and founder of the company Theranos. It turned out that her whole operation was predicated upon blood testing equipment that didn't work as advertised. In 2018, she was convicted of fraud and is currently serving time in jail. And such is the potency of the name that it turns out that Elizabeth Holmes is at the same federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas, in which Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice and girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell is also being held. Then there's James Egan Holmes, the so-called Dark Knight shooter, which case we wrote about on our old Bell Curve weblog. In 2012, Holmes supposedly shot up a Century 16 movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, leaving a dozen people dead and some 70 others injured. During the Chicago-based World's Columbian Exposition in 1893, Herman Webster Mudgett, under the alias Dr. Henry Howard H. Holmes, allegedly killed an unknown number of persons, possibly hundreds, in a custom-built torture chamber known as Murder Castle. His crimes may have been exaggerated in retellings. Nevertheless, they earned him the nickname Devil in the White City. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention yet another fictional detective, ode to the imagination of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and perhaps the most famous of them all, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. There's also the cable news networks, CNN's, Washington, D.C.-based senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes, and on and on. As the final credits to Snake Eyes roll, viewers hear the song Sin City. Singer-songwriter Meredith Brooks tells us, quote, "In this town of pain, you could be the lucky one. Fate turns on a dime." In a crucial movie scene, Nick Cage's character becomes irate when talking with an important witness because the information she delivers to him implicates his longtime friend. When she asks what prompted his sudden hostility, Cage shouts, quote, "Because I didn't have to know. My world would have gone on turning just fine. But now either way I look, I have to do something I don't want to do." It would hardly stretch things to describe the moment in the film as a major turning point in the plot. I'm sure I don't have to remind viewers that the conservative activist group co-founded by Charlie Kirk and businessman William Thomas Bill Montgomery in 2012 was named Turning Point USA. Kirk's many college campus appearances, debates, and speeches were evidently arranged in conjunction with or under the auspices of Turning Point. Of course, the phrase Turning Point goes back to the 17th century. Figuratively, it signifies the point at which a decisive change takes place. September 10, 2025 was certainly a turning point in the latter sense for Charlie Kirk, just as September 11, 2001 was for the U.S. as a country. During the 2024 presidential election cycle, the mainstream media repeatedly drew parallels to 1968. We spent an entire video pondering the significance of these efforts, but our elevator pitch would be that the earlier year marked important transitions in economics, such as away from Bretton Woods and into the post-Bretton Woods era, in politics, from the 5th to 6th so-called party systems, according to a standard accounting, in the so-called U.S.-Israel special relationship, and a few other things besides. Concordantly, in our presentation 1968, we proposed the idea that the populace is being prepared, predictive programming style, to undergo further tectonic shifts, socioculturally speaking. For an in-depth look, see the video. Another plot point, and from the standpoint of the Snake Eyes story a red herring, is that the trigger puller was an alleged Palestinian terrorist who is said to have been protesting against the U.S. sending weapons to Israel. Charlie Kirk is on record eulogizing the Marxist-turned-neoconservative activist David Joel Horowitz.
We lost a legend yesterday, David Horowitz. David Horowitz was a mentor and a friend of mine, one of the original people who really believed in the vision of Turning Point USA.
Remember that part of the unfolding narrative has to do with questions about whether or not Kirk's loyalties to Israel and to its ongoing project of ethnic cleansing of the occupied territories and associated genocide of the Palestinians was as unwavering of late as the powerful pro-Israel lobby requires it to be. Some commentators, such as the curiously named Crystal Ball of the YouTube channel Breaking Points, have supposed, quite plausibly, that Charlie Kirk's options here could basically have been summarized in the words of Nick Cage's character. Either way he looked, Kirk was faced with something he didn't want to do. So let's assume this storyline is true. On the one hand, should Kirk antagonize the Israel lobby, including many of his powerful investor sponsors, such as hedge fund billionaire William Albert Bill Ackman or political financier Robert J. Shillman? And should he alienate the so-called Christian Zionists in his MAGA base? Or, on the other hand, should Kirk give voice to his allegedly growing opposition to Israel's behavior, most visibly in Gaza, as supposedly recently evidenced by his associations and platform sharing with people like Tucker Carlson? But in addition to all of this, news reports are replete with warnings about an impending or imminent turning point for the world regarding the advancement of artificial intelligence technology. Some of this talk tries to predict the moment at which AI reaches the fabled singularity. That is, the time at which artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence and the machines begin self-improving, with or without bona fide self-awareness, in all likelihood resulting in our loss of control. While we're on the subject, AI-enhanced or generated images make it difficult these days to determine what is real and what is fabricated. To illustrate, take the meme alleged to have been posted by Trump via social media, invoking a phrase that, in Israeli slang, may or may not be a sort of double entendre, one meaning of which is said to be useful idiot or patsy. Is it real or is it make-believe? One commentator further remarked that the neck, where Charlie Kirk was shot, could be symbolic for the throat, symbolic for the voice, and that therefore the assassinations, both of Charles Kirkland in the film and Charlie Kirk in real life, underscore the rationale of silencing the target. Another commentator noted that Orem, the city in Utah where he was shot, is an anagram for Rome. Although we lack time presently to unpack what we think may be the significance of this excellent observation, we recommend it for your consideration. Still another commentator brought to our attention a collection of writings associating clown archetypes with the biblical Nephilim. According to ABC News, both Charlie Kirk and Erica Kirk shared glimpses of their home life on social media, sharing photos of their children, though not sharing their names or faces. That Kirk's children, or alleged children, do show up in numerous photographs, always with their backs facing the camera and their heads turned away, calls to mind scenes from Christopher Nolan's movie Inception, which, in the words of Encyclopedia Britannica, is a science fiction thriller film released in 2010 that explores the boundaries between dream and reality. One tagline from a movie poster reads, "Your mind is the scene of the crime." If so, at least you have the opportunity to preserve your crime scene and do serious investigation of it. For if some reports are true, and I have no idea if they are or not, for example, this one brought to us via the India Times, then the physical crime scene may already have been obliterated. In the movie, the character Dom Cobb, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, has two children, Philippa and James, who are featured always turned away from the camera in what are ostensibly dream sequences. At the end of the movie, in a denouement that some have interpreted as Cobb's return to reality, the two children's faces are finally seen briefly. Further afield, but still within bounds for our name games, there's the case of John Simpson Kirkpatrick, a stretcher bearer who was at the bloody World War I Battle of Gallipoli, the dual twin aspect is present here as well, both in the fact that Kirkpatrick was evidently and variously called by other names, including Murphy and his middle name of Simpson, as well as the fact that artwork and memorials for the guy are sometimes said to conflate him with Richard Alexander Henderson, who is said to have performed similar field ambulance duties. But according to the British Broadcasting Company, or BBC, he was killed in action May 1915 by a sniper's bullet. Also of interest is the character Gordon Pritzker, played by Peter McRobbie. The Pritzker family, associated in part with the Hyatt hotel chain, is not only one of the most powerful in the state of Illinois, but it is also active on the political scene and reportedly bankrolled and fostered the career of Barack Hussein Obama. Penny Sue Pritzker thus became Obama's Commerce Secretary, as well as, under Joseph Robinette Joe Biden Jr., an economic emissary to Ukraine, from which country ancestor Jacob Pritzker is said to have emigrated. As we pointed out in several Substack articles, a highly sexualized, antinomian strain of Kabbalistic Judaism, called Sabbateism, as well as an offshoot due to Polish religious figure Jakob Frank, was once prominent in the Ukraine. These Sabbatean Frankist forms of mysticism may even have attracted the Hoch family, H-O-C-H. You'll recall that one Jan Ludwig Hyman Benjamin Hoch changed his name to Ian Robert Maxwell in 1948, around the time Israel declared its statehood. Robert Maxwell is the father of the previously mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell, best known for her nefarious associations with Jeffrey Epstein. Going further, Pritzker organization head Thomas Pritzker was evidently named as a possible abuser in a deposition by the now deceased Epstein victim Virginia Louise Giuffre, born Virginia Roberts. Thomas Pritzker, in turn, married one Margot Marshall, who, under her married name, Margot Pritzker, financed a comprehensive 12-volume English translation of the 13th century Spanish Kabbalistic book, the Sefer HaZohar. This Pritzker Zohar, published over 13 years by Stanford University Press, was principally edited by Daniel C. Matt. Most recently, Sue Pritzker's brother, J. Robert J.B. Pritzker, became the 43rd governor of Illinois, and he has been engaged in protracted feuds with Donald Trump. Just who was backing Charlie Kirk? Who got his career going? Some names are known, of course, though someone sent me a video clip which appears to be of the late conservative radio show host Rush Limbaugh, saying that he was first introduced to Charlie Kirk when an unspecified group that Limbaugh refers to only as they brought the young Turning Point activist to a golf course in West Palm Beach to meet him. Who has that kind of access?
I don't want to jinx him, but I'm just going to tell you. They brought Charlie Kirk to the golf course to meet me. He was in town to set up this Turning Point thing. And they brought him to the golf course to meet me. And they brought him out while I was getting ready to go to the range to loosen up. And I spoke with him for about a half hour. And he told me how he grew up in a home where my program was on all the time. Told him he's very wise. His family's very wise. He chuckled. He laughed. This is the kind of guy that you can see really becoming big in politics as he gets older.
Finally, commentators also noted the lexical associations between MAGA's new catchphrase, I am Charlie Kirk, and a previous French slogan, Je suis Charlie, translated I am Charlie, which free speech champions and other sympathizers used to express their solidarity with the victims of the January 2015 terrorist attack on the satirical French newspaper Charlie Hebdo. As a parting shot, we will remind viewers that we have elsewhere probed other synchronicities, including those exploring pertinent numerological angles, such as those that intersect with assassination symbolism, like via the video game Hitman Agent 47, which we wrote about on our old Bell Curve weblog, and which we were reminded of by another commenter. We also get into other Trumpiana, like when, as POTUS 45, the Donald channeled the Batman villain, Bane. We would be here for another half an hour if we launched into an analysis of the word villain, originally meaning commoner or lowborn, and later acquiring the connotation of wickedness. But, of course, villain fits into the same pattern as our other Charlie-related syncs, at the least in virtue of their mutual synonym, churl. One commenter wonders whether the Charlie Kirk references to being Scottish or Scots-Irish may hint obliquely or directly at a Scottish Rite Freemasonic connection. This is a deep question, since we were planning on doing a deep dive at some point into Scottish or Scot-oriented angles in Synchronicities and in various streams of the occult. I think we're going to kick that can down the road and address it in a later presentation, so stay tuned. We want to thank all our viewers and commenters. But at the risk of accidentally ignoring or missing someone, which we're not doing intentionally, or mispronouncing a handle, which of course I'm not trying to do, we especially want to express our appreciation to the following people, without whom this presentation wouldn't have been possible, starting with Mr. Michael Hoffman, but also Maria Boyd, Lisa Brisky, Matthew Britnell, Mick Chilton, Dashel DeBees, Fabulous Disaster, Jeb Fallen, Nomadic, Thompson J. Hudson, Jeffrey 137, user Hi, I am Barney, Abitha 1290, Court Jester, Hush Connie, Chandler Kelly, Annie Masters, John Montoya, user My Account, Stephen Pythagorean, Bob T. Roberts, Third Leg Stalliano, One Up Vodka, Leslie Witter, You Bet Your Rass, and, of course, Jim Brandon.